Series of 4 presentations by Vermont artists. I'm Joy Spontak, president of the Art Resource Association, the organization sponsoring this event. I'd like to begin by thanking Mary Ellen Martin of the Vermont College Arts Center and Sandy Jocelyn from Vermont College for providing us with the space for the series. I'd also like to thank the Vermont Council on the Arts and National Life of Vermont for helping fund the series. There will be 4 distinguished sculptors speaking tonight. After the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions of the speakers. Then all of you are invited to stay and have some refreshments. I'd like to introduce Kate Mueller, the Vice President of the Art Resource Association, who will introduce the speakers tonight. Thank you for coming.
Okay, our first 2 speakers this evening are Eric Oberg and Jerry Williams. Eric is originally from Elmira, New York. He studied printmaking at the State University of New York in Oswego. He did freelance work in printmaking in Watertown, New York before coming to Barre in 1976 to study stone carving. Eric apprenticed himself to Frank Gaylord, with whom he worked for nearly 6 years. He consequently worked as a granite carver at Dante Rossi, Rollo Granite Company, and North Barre Granite Company. Jerry began carving in soapstone and alabaster in 1976 and sold his work to local galleries in Vermont and to private collections. From 1980 to 82, Jerry studied art in the Bachelor of Fine Arts program at Johnson State College. As part of an independent study at Johnson, he worked at Gaylord Sculpture Studios. In 1982, Jerry left school to apprentice with Frank Gaylord. In 1986, Jerry, Eric, and Michael Sheehan formed a partnership and established their own business called 3D Sculptor Studios, located in a section of the Cook, Watkins, and Patch building on Blackwell Street in Barre. There they have a large studio space equipped for carving. Please welcome Eric and Jerry.
Would you flip up the switch, Linda, in the back? This is an early carving, the first like it. Then so I had to take a picture of it. I was very well satisfied with this carving. It's a Catholic image of Mary. I suppose anybody else's image of Mary would be about the same, but it's the Catholics who provide the commissions for most of the work that I do. I was also pleased because up until this point I very rarely got to do the job from beginning to end. My apprenticeship amounted to roughing out and finishing with my employer Frank Gaylord doing the carving work in the middle. And gradually, I could do more of the roughing out and finish from an earlier stage, and that way, learn how to do the whole work, the whole job. This piece was modeled by Frank Gaylord as a small sketch, and then I carved the figure, and it's full size. It's about 4.5 feet tall. It too is a very traditional image of sort of like blessing a gravesite with a flower from her wreath. So here though, Frank Gaylord still wanted to do the faces, so he did the face and I did everything else. Here are other views of it. It's I think a very nice figure, a very graceful pose. It's not often we get to put as much detail into a job. More often people want the simplest, fastest, cheapest thing. And that, I think, sometimes is a pity, because it is fun to develop it fully. Nice detail of the face. That shows the clearance around the arm. It always seems like it's very dangerous to carve such a thing that has a free arm like that, but the arm is mostly carved before the stone in between the arm and the body is taken away. That's called a web, and it connects the arm to the body with a gradually thinner and thinner connection, till finally it's removed from the hand towards the elbow, bit by bit, and then the arm is free. Then you don't work on anymore. This is my negative example. I had to include at least one negative example because we like very much to do good sculptures, but sometimes people have a very strict idea about what they want. So we like to make fun of this one. This is, even though this took so much time and effort, it was doomed from the start. It was, we call it the soldier trying to sell a grenade. It's so much more effective to show an action at the beginning or the end, like at the end of the follow through. If he's throwing the grenade, maybe like that, or at the beginning, because you can see what's going to happen or what just happened. But when it's halfway through, it's like, who dropped this? The pin is full. Also, he's walking toward where it's going to land. That doesn't seem very smart. But we had to do that. While I was at Rossi Sculpture Studio, he had this lion to do, and I got very little money for it, so I did it as fast as I could. So here are some views of the lion. It's about 4.5 feet from the front of the stone to the rear of the stone. I mean, from end to end. The long way is about 4 feet.
What kind of time did that take?
That took 96 hours. Here's another very strange project. So I just had to have these boots duplicated in granite, or as near as possible, given the limitations of a absolutely rigid material like granite. They were to go on either side of a monument stone in a cemetery. So we had the pair of boots, and I worked on that for a couple of weeks. About 1 week for each boot. But in the end, we felt like they looked like you could put your foot in them.
What kind of granite is that?
It's a red granite. I don't remember what kind. Do you, Frank? Don't remember? That's going back a ways. I did that while I was at Frank Gaylord Sculpture Studio too, as the Doughboy was also done there. And another thing about the Doughboy, 3 of them have been carved. The worst ones are the ones they want the most. When they see a real bad sculpture and they say, I want one too. One last shot of those. You can see by the reflections that the folds that were made by the foot in the boot were reproduced in the surface of the granite. Here's me standing on a sculpture. It gives you an idea of the scale. Those were large figures in relief, and that was done up at Rock of Ages Company. In this case, all I was to do was carve the faces and around the heads a little bit, and the hand. No, I didn't even do the hands. Everything else was done by somebody else. I don't really care for that. I like to do the whole job. I like to connect all the parts. This is a job which I have right here. It's not a commission. It's one I did on speculation. It was done in the autumn before the 1980 Olympics in Lake Placid. And it was displayed there at the Lake Placid Resort Hotel during the Olympics in February. Here's another view of it. It's been outdoors for the last 6 years.
Where?
It's been out at Worcester for the past year, and before that it was in Barre in my backyard. it got dirty. I hastily cleaned it up in the driveway just at around 20 minutes to 7. Wanted to include this as a self-portrait I did that in 77 maybe, while I was taking a course with Bill Brower. He was a fine artist in Waitsfield. He lives in Warren or Waitsfield.
He's going to
That's right. In fact, he's going to be speaking later, another time. Anyway, I wanted to include that as an example. I don't know why I got stuck in that location. I think that's not exactly. This is focus. Occasionally we get requests for hand-carved roses. And these roses are about life-size. This is another rose carving job, and in which the background was then polished. Oh, that got shuffled around. Yeah, that's my doughboy. Isn't he wonderful? Here's an angel I cut for Rock of Ages. This figure is 6 feet tall. This one I benefited from a mistake on this one. When I first laid out the figure, I made a cut where I thought would go beneath the chin. And later I realized that this face was supposed to be turned down. You don't look where the chin goes, right into where my cut was. So what I did is I pushed that chin way back, and that cut was just grazing the lip when I was done, and finally was removed completely. But it made for a better sculpture. The relief was very deep, and I got more out of that figure as a result of being pushed by the first mistake made so early on. This is an older picture done back in 77 or 8. I was still employed by Frank Gaylord and was working at Nativi Granite Company in Barre. That's part of a 7-foot figure or 8-foot figure in deep relief. That was in the Barre Life magazine, that picture. This is a cemetery job. It's called Christ in the Garden. And only about 3 or 4 months after this one was finished, I saw another carver with a photograph of this doing another one. I don't know why they never send a request to the man who did the one that they want. They always send it to somebody else who must interpret all over again. This is a very detailed, small carving. The whole niche is only 12 inches tall, and it's 3 inches deep, and the figure is only about 9 inches from head to toe. And I cut under the book on which the feet are, and there's all these little buildings in the background with crosses on top. It's a very fussy little job. This one's called Infant of Prague. So I've become a Catholic by association. That's it. Like I said before, all the commissions, for the most part, are the bread and butter of my work are Catholic cemetery commissions. This is one of the first carvings I did without having to let somebody else take it over. This was supposed to be St. Michael slaying the dragon. A segment was taken. It's just a section from a medieval painting. So I had to duplicate the style of that painting. And I was very pleased with that. This one is much more recent. It's about 3.5 feet from the bottom of the niche to the top. And the challenge here was to get the baby's face behind the mother's cheek and still have both in relief and with a balanced right and left side. So the whole face was turned like that, in order to get the chin out near the surface. Her chin is at the surface, her nose is at the surface, and her cheekbone is her cheek is at the surface. That's pretty much what determined the plane. The forehead was pushed back. This is a war memorial in Brattleboro. It's about 5 feet across, maybe 6, I don't remember. The leaves at the bottom are called laurel, and it's a sword under the claws of the eagle. This is just what you see. It's a bird dog. And I also polished parts of the, not quite polished, honed some of the granite to darken it. When granite is polished or honed, it gets darker because the light is carried into the stone and not scattered by the fractured surface. Just like snow, if you poured a lot of water on it, it becomes very translucent. Or any other stone, when wet, gets the same contrast. This is another dog, a Labrador Retriever. It's done about 3/4 life scale. It's done in a black granite. Same view, different light. We'll switch back. You can see what different details show up when the light changes. Light is so important in sculpture and is not very well appreciated by those who, even those who sell monuments that have sculpture on them. They complain that they can't see anything. They have it under a tree facing north, and the light is not distinct. Doesn't have a distinct direction, so it doesn't therefore have any shadows. The light really defines the sculpture after it's made. It either makes a success out of it or fails it completely. This was a challenge because I had for my model not only a book on Labrador Retrievers, but a picture of a model that was in some cemetery or yard or park, and the model was excellent. You know, I had these pictures, and I knew they're looking at something excellent. I can't be sloppy about it. If they're looking at something that's awful, then I can give them something better pretty easily. But if they're looking at something excellent, I'm challenged. Focus. I didn't know I had this many. This is a 6.5 foot tall statue of a Korean War period airman with parachute pack. This is one that had to be done without a model. Some people are so cheap they will not pay for a model to be made. They want this big statue, but they don't want to pay for a few weeks of planning. Came out all right, but it's not very smart to have them up against a rough rock like that. That's what they wanted.
So did you make your own model?
No, I didn't make a model for this. I carved this direct from a paper sketch. You know, just a drawing on paper. It would have been better, I think, to have them up against one of these concrete-filled pipes that they have sometimes for attaching chains to, for borders. Like they have those around in some places in airports too, to separate areas. And he could have stood against that. And that would have supported the leg. That's the idea here, is to get support for the legs so that any shock to the figure wouldn't break him off at the ankles. That's really what it's all about when you have the limitations of stone carving. See the zipper? That was just a little claw tool, could rake those little dots in real nice. And I clean up next to them. Look at that, a zipper. I had a helmet to look at, and I had an actual parachute pack. So I could look at the buckles and clasps and snaps and things to try to get them authentic. Now this is one I got to make a model of. And I have the model here. And there's such a difference, for me at least. I don't know how much will be apparent to others. But for me, I could put so much more into it if I could get at it at the planning stages. And it was a bit of talking to convince them to let me do it, rather than just rush ahead and carve something. They didn't pay me any extra for it, but at least I had to do it just to see if it would really, succeed. This is a press photo that was in the Times-Argus last May, a year ago, last May. You can see there's some expression in the face, and I had a chance to really do something with this. This is in a rough stage. There's still a lot to dig out. And in fact, that slide is in backwards. So everyone turn around. You see it there? Here it is, being hastily photographed in the truck bay because they got to have it tomorrow. It's like 11 o'clock at night. It's still got the dirt from the rope on the arm. That needs focusing, Linda. It's still got dirt on the arm from the rope and some wetness and stuff on the bottom, sand and things. But if I'm going to photograph it for the last chance, the box is half built. The guy who came to build the box came, I was still working on it. He was building a box while I was still buzzing away. Here's a detail of his shoe. Went to the Army-Navy store and got a pair of jungle boots, wore them, and also used them as a model. Now we are coming to Jerry's sculptures.
Looks like there's
Really?
a few more.
There's more. Sorry, Jerry. Other views. Oh yeah, I would not have liked to miss these. Here the figure was supported by grasses, and now when I would come into a. This is a detail from a large carving of a figure of Christ. Probably blocking quite a few of these. No? Can everyone see? The figure is 6 feet tall. The niche is about 7 feet tall. It's a very traditional image. A little different angle. In very deep relief. Usually they aren't that deep.
What is it?
I think it's 7 inches. 7 inches deep. The niche is 7 feet tall. So it's a pretty big stone. There's still rubber on it too. Some people don't realize that other color on the stone next to the speckly surface of the granite is a rubber stencil. And that's how all that other decorative, switch back here. That's how that other decorative shaped carving is made. And the letters too. And the flame on either side is done by sandblast. The rubber protects the stone. Where the stone is exposed, the sandblast cuts it. This is a model for a portrait bust that I did recently. There's another picture that will show the face better. It's of a policeman And in order to quickly please the customer, I put the actual badge on the clay and dabbed the clay over it. And that way I saved myself a lot of modeling time because I already had a model. I had the badge itself. Didn't need to do it twice. They never noticed that that was not clay. Tricks of the trade, huh? Here's the marble. This is Carrara marble. And I found it very pleasant to work with, although it was very fussy material because everything I did showed. In granite, a lot doesn't show. You have to make something very definite for it to appear. With this, every little mark the chisel made was really right there to be seen. So I had to finish very carefully and painstakingly. Another view. I like the white background better. I discovered that after the pictures were back and the sculpture was gone.
I thought it said any better, I can't.
I just got these slides back from a photo finisher in Essex Junction this evening. They said they couldn't get them any sooner. So that was tight. Now you can see how the badge came out. I got that with the help of a Dremel tool. I'll use anything to get the effect I want. There are traditionalists who say, you know, the only right and beautiful way is to tap, tap, tap the whole way. But I'll use anything to get the result I want. I use diamond saws, I use Dremel tools, pneumatic hammers, carbide and steel wool, sandpaper, anything that'll do it. And it's not a compromise. It really isn't. It's really the other direction. It's heading towards being uncompromising. And there's the time factor too. There's a distinction that some people make that a machine is something that is not guided by the hand, that is on its own track, let's say, or its own movement pattern. And a tool is something that is responsive to the hand. So that would clearly make me a tool user, not a machine user, because all the tools I use are directed and responsive to the hand. This is Rodin's Thinker reproduced in granite. It's 2 feet tall. That was a tough little one to carve. It was so complicated. Even though I finally had a good model to use, it was very tough to do. I just couldn't believe I would go that far to find that elbow. I couldn't, I couldn't believe that one shoulder would be so much higher than the other, or that there could be so much twist in the back. Rodin got the maximum out of the pose. He went for the absolute most that could be done with it. He's really leaning way out over the knees are way out over the feet, way beyond the feet. That shows how far out he leans. I like that view. Photographs do miss a lot, especially when they've been prints, then slides, and then projected. Each time you lose some of what was in the previous step. Now you can see the twist in the back. And he's sitting off to the right. And what he's sitting on is sticking out to the left. There's different lighting. Here's just another carving on a monument, a cemetery monument. This was also on a cemetery monument. It's from a painting, I think, by Botticelli. It's an inch deep. It's about 10-inch circle, an inch deep relief. This is the best I could get of this one. I took a Polaroid and it went. That's the way. I don't really very often have time to photograph one. Usually the customer is screaming bloody murder by the time one is done. And it's just got to go right away. So this was from a Polaroid shot that was out of focus. But that's a 16-inch high niche, and the relief is 1.5 inches. The upturned face is a challenging way to find a face. Here's another St. Francis. This is a somewhat popular item to have the hair polished to show the contrast. This is a job. I've done many, many, many polished hair carvings. Yes, I do my own polishing. And it doesn't take forever, but it's got to look like it did. I think that must be nice. There are a few left there, Jerry.
Yeah. I'm going to be very brief. I don't have quite the extensive slideshow that I'm kind of a newcomer to this business, so you'll see that here. See what we got here. This was designed for bronze. It's about 2 feet by 14 or 15 inches, I guess. And that's done in ceramic slip. I like that material because it cleans up and you get a really beautiful finish on it. And that's used for a maquette or a model to be sand cast in bronze. These are wax. I figured you'd see a lot of granite shots tonight, so I chose some other things that I've been working on.
What was that for?
That's just something that I do for myself. There's no real customer for these things. Most of the things I'll be showing you here. That's part of the struggle too, is just to find the time to do things on your own for yourself, because this business really gets fast. You've got to constantly keep up with the stone carving, and it's hard to get that other part out there, which is some of this stuff. These are done in wax, by the way. That's for bronze also. These were designed for porcelain, and that's also ceramic, but it's fired. Someday I'll have them done in porcelain. I need a good mold maker. Anybody out there? Okay. These were part of a sea mammal series that I did. Another after hours project. It's tough to find that kind of time. Those are dolphins. That, by the way, is supposed to be a male. They're the ones that do all the babysitting while the mom's away eating.
What material are these made of?
These are ceramic fists. They were cast in slip. You know what a slip composition is? It's a liquid clay poured into a plaster mold, and then it hardens up, and you put it in the oven and fire it, just like a pottery sort of, except it's a lot more consistent. Really nice stuff. It looks like porcelain. That's why I use this. It's a white clay, but porcelain would shrink another 20% or so. All that detail would be a lot sharper in porcelain. That's a first seal.
That's a bronze plaque I did for my sister-in-law and baby. Her daughter, they died in a fire 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. That was my first bronze piece. And I really like the material. I'd like to incorporate more bronze in the things I do. Because it's granite, you can't model granite like you can clay. You have to use very, like Eric was saying before, hard, clean lines so that everything shows up. And with marble and bronze, you can do a lot more with it, texture-wise. That's sort of an experimental piece there. That was a piece of steel and a piece of stone. It looks like it's going through, but actually it's 3 different pieces. The steel, the stone, and then another piece. And that's another point of departure I'd like to make too, is to combine steel and stone and mixed media in my work. This was for I carved this at Frank Gaylord's when I worked for him. That's the model down there. You see that little white? And you're supposed to get something out of that. People, I don't know what they have in their heads when they do this, but it's a lot of interpretation. And this was for a sculptor, actually. It's for his own monument. It's a guy that designed the Barbie doll. Agrippa. Yeah, looks like a Barbie doll. This was fun because Frank had hired a new apprentice at the time. He's hiding right now. And the thing was roughed out without feet. And it was a real challenge to try to get everything in there. And we were thinking of all kinds of ways of maybe joining feet underneath it. And things that would take a week. And by the time I worked from the top down, by the time I got to the feet, I was really pretty angry, I guess. I ended up just moving the drapery up and putting something in there, carving some feet. So the proportions are probably a little off. But you really get steamed, you know, when you start. You feel like you're going somewhere, and then you get to that mistake, and everything has to work around it. It turned out okay, though. This is one I recently carved. It's a 4.5-foot statue. There it is again.
That's one of the first shots in our own studio.
Yeah. That was one of the first large things I did in the studio or any place. It's a large place. That's a standard job. That's pretty much the standard fare in our industry. That's the back. Now that was fun, wasn't it? I believe John Hanna is next.
Yeah, I'll set up first so the control is kind of cool and just for just saw it
Okay. Our next speaker is John Hanna. John attended the University of Wisconsin, graduating in 1972 with a degree in fine arts. Attracted to Vermont's granite, John moved to Vermont after graduation. He lived in Winooski, initially working on his own carving marble. In 1973, he met Frank Gaylord and gained a sculpture apprenticeship at Gaylord Sculptural Studios in Barre. For the next 10 years, John worked with Frank as a granite carver. Since 1985, John has been working independently. The studio is located at Keoldi granite in Barre. John sculpts in wood as well as stone and has produced limited editions of cast metal sculpture. Please welcome John Hanna.
That's fine.
The slide's only 15 years old, so anything could happen there.
Good, John.
You're going to see a little bit of strange stuff here. That is focused. I was going to start my talk out with the fact that about a week ago I was just finishing moving into a new house, and I was thinking, gee, do I really want to do this? And then last night I sort of I went through an experience that told me it was okay. I was sitting working on my talk, and suddenly I noticed I had an audience. And there was this little critter with a black and white fur coat about 5 feet away from me. And so I said, the show isn't until tomorrow night. Why don't you move on? And as he turned to move away, he didn't give any gestures that caused this, notice there was no smell anyway. So as long as he's not here tonight, hopefully this talk will go in a similar vein. I want to start out that I started really doing artwork back at the Art Student League when I was in high school. And when I went to college, well, actually before that, when I was in high school, I made my own marble tools after reading The Agony and the Ecstasy by Irving Stone. Needless to say, it's led to more than I expected. When I got into college, I was still doing the human figure during my freshman year, but as time progressed, this was the 60s, and I thought I'd show these never-before-seen slides of what I was producing during the 60s before I entered the granite trades here in Barre. These are, I got about 7 slides of some examples here. You can go ahead and flick them over. This was supposed to be a 10-minute talk, but they seem to be a little longer tonight. This sculpture teacher I had in this particular year just happened to be a weaving instructor. Go ahead, you can flip to the next one. I didn't want to dwell on these, but this was the mental state of a 22-year-old. Continue. This was during a transparency course. We can all see through it today. I think maybe there's one more there. Yeah. I had a lot of fun. This was the only A+ I ever got in college. Really, that's true, too. About the time I was getting ready to graduate, I started chipping away in the basement of my house at the time that I was renting. My roommates got a little angry with me because I'd do it at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And you'd come home from the bar and you'd start working on a piece of marble in the basement. But I was bigger than them, so they let it go. Well, that sort of carried on, and I graduated. After Vietnam was over and everything, I decided it was time. So I went ahead and got my degree. Needless to say, it was a BS degree with a major in fine arts. Someone commented to me tonight, that's unusual. I says, my whole college career was unusual. So. At that time, I decided to gravitate towards Vermont because in my earlier years, I had visited up here and knew that there was marble here. And that's sort of what drew me here. I had no idea there was a granite industry. I didn't even know it existed. I just figured I'd always done everything both feet first, so why not do it again? Let's just see if the next slide's... No, that's another one of those. Okay. There we go. This was one I did in a cellar hole in Winooski. It was done with strictly hand tools. Now, I didn't have any pneumatic machines in those days. I look at these pieces. These are sort of like blazes on a tree of a person's career, these pieces, because in between, as we go along here, there's just been hundreds of production pieces, but the fine art pieces that you get to do are sort of like your growth as an artist. So shortly after this period, I went down and visited a man named Frank Gaylord. And turn to the next slide. This is I call it the fat lady. Now the funny part is I did this in marble just preceding going to work for Frank Gaylord. Now, I could do that in marble, but it took me 2 years of struggling after this point before my skills were good enough so I could do anything similar in granite. That's the difference in these stones. I did a number of pieces at this time, but you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, these are all kind of bad photos. They were taken from photographs and transferred to slides quite a few years ago. And this was a piece called Sandcastle, and I was still in my whimsical stage about this time. I still had a sense of humor. Even after 2 years of pounding on rock and all the frustrations. But the thing that kept me going at this point was I was making a lot of technical breakthroughs. The first 2 years to actually the first 4 years, I was making one breakthrough after another technically. And this here was the first time I'd ever done a through cut on a piece. That's the hole through the arm. And I never did that on any of the granite pieces for quite a while after that, but this piece was on my own time, so nobody could stop me. I didn't have to knock out a niche. I was at this time of my life, I was acting more as an assistant. There was Frank Gaylord and I was his assistant. There were only two of us. And one thing I should mention that all the people that are speaking tonight, I've worked with them all. Eric Oberg and I worked for 5 years together. Frank and I have worked for, 12 or 10 years. And Jerry and I worked together for about 3 years in between my vacations. Okay, then we go to the next slide. Well, this is during the same similar time period, about 1974, 75. I just gave this to my alma mater. When I was out there, I decided I didn't want to bring it back. It cost me $40 to get it there. And, so I decided to dedicate it to my grandfather, who was a teacher at the college, and force him to take it. I think it's still in storage, though. That's just the way things go.
How thick is that, John?
That was just what they call a skin cut. This piece of granite probably goes from 4 inches down to 2 inches. That was Salisbury pink. It was a real nice color stone, and I enjoyed it. I knocked that out in a weekend. You know, you didn't have any time, as Jerry was pointing out earlier. You just don't have time to really spend a lot of time on your fine art. So these pieces are just sort of like wrenched up from you, and you do them. You just have to do them. I called this one Julia. I'd love to read my notes, but I can't even see them anymore, so we'll just keep on going here. Somewhere after this, you can go to the next slide now, and we'll see where we're at here. Okay. About this time was about 1976. You can focus that one if it does. It's very dark slides. Sorry about that. Oh, maybe it doesn't focus. I don't know. It's on the front there. But I was I was getting so tired at work, and to continue carving fine art and granite at this period of time, it was very difficult because you were working an 8-hour day, you were exhausted when you came home. And so I was getting very frustrated because I wanted to do some art. And I decided to change forms, or at least change materials at this point. And I did a whole series of wood carvings, probably 5 or 6 of them, I don't remember, 7, 8, whatever. This particular one, this was the Olympics, this was Nadia Comaneci, and I was very taken with her. I've done a whole number of series on gymnasts. This particular one, I combined different colored woods. The hair is out of ebony, the torso is out of walnut, and most of the rest of it is cherry wood with a background of walnut. I remember putting it up in a one-man show I had, and somebody says, "Why did you ruin it?" I says, "Why? What are you talking about?" I says, "Why'd you have to paint it?" You know, after all the work I go into, it just, you know, it shows me I should give up my expectations and just do it, you know, enjoy it, and have fun with it. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, there's another wood carving about that period. I think it's backwards. I gave it to my brother, so he got to hold it. My family seems to have acquired all my fine art. My brother owned the most quantity, and then when he got poor, he sold it all to my mother. I think my next slide epitomizes my period of time. We've already heard once about this. Now, I don't use this as a negative example. I call it the bad penny. Because about the time we figured we finished the first one, Eric and I cut the first one. And this was, you know, we'd struggled. This was the first time we'd ever done an arm up in the air with all this. We had to have all these webs under them and all this protection. I mean, we were sweating. We were really nervous on this. And there was so much detail and through cuts. And I mean, you bang your knuckles. And I mean, it was just a horrible, horrible experience. And about the time we finished it, Frank come out in the plant and tell us, "Guess what, guys? We got another one." You know? Luckily, Eric carved the second one all by himself. And I thought, "Woo, I'm glad I'm out of that." And I started talking to Frank about, "Why didn't you break that model? You know, throw it in a grout box." And next thing I know is he had another one. And just before I left to take a nice long year off vacation, we ended up finishing carving the third one. So I had that slide. Frank gave me that slide. I just had to show it. It sort of, there was a period of time in there when this just sort of epitomized what was going on in the granite in my end of it anyway. I was doing a lot of big work at that time for Frank. Okay, I think that's the last slide. Now I've got, you leave the lights on for a second here. About 1983, I took a vacation. My house burned. So I had a whole pocket full of money, and I said, I can either reinvest and do the wise thing, or I can split. And so I took a year off and went out and did fine art. Now, I started doing a new series of work just before I left.
What's that material?
It's a ceramic. I finally got motivated again. And of course, I didn't get motivated enough to take a picture of it, but you'll have to suffer. I've never been a real photographer. And then I did one more piece just before I left.
Is that also stone?
Yeah. This is gilded gold. This is sort of a gold, low fire glaze and stuff, and mounted on mahogany wood that my father had around for 25 years, and I finally got a piece of it. That's all I got was one piece. The rest of it still sits. Anyway, then I came back after my wonderful year of rest and relaxation, and went back at it with Frank for a while, carving some more pieces of granite. And then about a year and a half ago, I went on my own, and it continues.
Our last speaker this evening is Frank Gaylord, Frank is from Clarksburg, West Virginia. He attended Carnegie Institute of Technology in Pittsburgh and finished his schooling in the Tyler Art School of Temple University of Philadelphia, where he received a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in 1950. In the early 50s, Frank moved to Barre, Vermont. He first worked for E.J. Batchelder Company and then for the Rock of Ages Corporation as a stonecutter, carver, sculptor, and designer. In 1957, he founded Frank Gaylord Sculpture Studios. His studio is located in the Cook Watkins and Patch Building on Smith Street in Barre. There he employs 5 full-time sculptors and carvers to carry out his designs. Frank has been commissioned to design and sculpt numerous memorials, public monuments, and portraits and compositions for private collectors throughout the United States. Among the projects he is currently at work on are an over-life-size full-figure portrait of Governor Ella Grasso for the south facade of the Connecticut State Capitol Building in Hartford, Connecticut, and a portrait composition of General Ernest Harmon for the Norwich University campus. Please welcome Frank Gaylord.
I'd like to tell first. I have something to say. Several people here have heard it many times. To you, I apologize. I edited this down to 10 minutes, so I'm not going to talk long, and expurgated it down so as not to offend anybody, and still say what I wanted to say. Some friends and I walked together, waist deep in snow. We were young, just over childhood. We were in Belgium, and we were armed, and we were soldiers. Some of us were hurt, some of us were died, I think, for a reason. Now that reason comes under criticism by new generations of people who were not there because they were not born and didn't know of things at that time. I'm a product of my time, as you can see the way I'm dressed, with the way these other slobs who just spoke. A different era. But I'm a product of my time, and I saw my friends die, and I feel that that gives me a stake and a responsibility in defending the same values today that we fought for and won then, a free society. And so, Madam Chairman, Chairwomen, ladies and gentlemen, as a result partly of an emotional experience and decision, and partly from the course of least resistance, I somehow became an artist in a free society with all its weaknesses like a liquor store beside a gun store, beside a lottery store, beside a porno shop. Strong sections of our society are very much against 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of these establishments. They nevertheless exist legally and might well be regarded as weaknesses of a free society. In order to have the advantages of a free society, we must reckon with its weaknesses. Art, I suppose, loses something when it's protected and subsidized by a central power of energy, perhaps most of all, but harmony and inventiveness under a totally academic environment. Art then too easily becomes an expression of a controlling group. How different, I wonder, fares art in a free society. Art that would, in a free society, be an expression of the people becomes over a period of time a victim of the weakness of that freedom. It is said, and argued well, that in a democracy, mediocrity will ultimately prevail. You know, one vote, one person. The majority being mediocre, mediocrity becomes its aim. Now, I transferred from an academic institution to a progressive school midway through my formal art education. I was an upperclassman now, but I didn't know anybody in this new school. I adjusted to the freedom of a progressive environment because I brought my discipline with me. I liked the progressive environment. Though they didn't teach anatomy, I already knew it. Basic design principles were ignored, but I already knew them, I thought. Freedom was encouraged. Do anything, just keep busy. Those students showing ability got their P's for passing, just as those with no ability, or little, got those same P's. No one got an F, and no one failed. I remember a young girl student, heavy and unattractive, and doing nothing to change. She got special attention and preferential treatment from the instructors and a kind of tolerant respect from the students. Her work was not very good. She didn't join in any of the student art discussions abundant on campus, and she had only a minimal amount of ability. I came to find out that she already had a BFA, that's Bachelor in Fine Arts, a BS in E, that's Bachelor of Science in Education, and a Master of Fine Arts, MFA, a Master of Fine Arts. And she was continuing her art projects while working for her PhD, and she got it. She could malinger no more. After a while, I got my final P and graduated and went on my way. Now, I've forgotten her name, so I'll call her Minnie. I don't know whatever happened to her, so for my own selfish purpose, I'm going to make up the rest of the story. Minnie landed a job on the staff of a large museum. Being young, she wasn't given much responsibility at first, but as time went by, the older staff members passed on, and with all those letters, Dr. Minnie started looking pretty good. She arranged exhibits and chose to show the kind of art with which she always identified. Remember that in her student days, she learned to resent the things she didn't have, because things like talent and ability, and the occasional show-off student with an abundance of promise. There would be no such thing in her exhibits. There would be no such distractions that might suck attention from plain ordinary works. She liked the rhythmic flow about her exhibits. No bothersome interruptions. She sought the plain, the ordinary, the everyday, mild, the common, the customary, the usual, the simple, the prosaic, and dull. Dr. Minnie sought mediocrity, bullseye mediocrity. She now has the years, the experience, the letters, and credentials to back it up. Now, Dr. Minnie may have become a teacher of art, which only helps me make my point. If she did, she has by now, for a long time, run the school, because in the teaching profession, letters are important. Now, let's multiply Dr. Minnie by thousands, and you can possibly see what I'm getting at. Because of all those Minnies, there's a pile of rocks in downtown Hartford. There's a pile of rocks in downtown Akron, and in Philadelphia there's a 5-story high clothespin in the shadow of City Hall. And I could go on and on. Thousands of strange things in public places using the name of art with no more art content than cloud formations or driftwood or seashells. It's interesting, some, perhaps, but more a product of whim than thought and ability. And they are paid for by public funds and grants. Grants? He goes, Dr. Minnie knows how to get grants and teach her kind to get them, so that the elevation of mediocrity and the aggrandizement of the ordinary may continue. On with the good work. Wealth is necessary to art. And without kings and nobles, the church, there would be no art history. Free societies may accumulate wealth and use some of it to support of art. Immature freedom provokes a hostility to order and discipline. So, mediocre tastes develop in societies, and tend to waste themselves in bizarre experimentation, confusing originality with genius and novelty with beauty. I haven't quoted that directly from Will and Ariel Durant, but I've paraphrased it. It's their thought in my own words. Arbitrary conclusions occur, resulting from lax minds with little real ability. The results are allowed to occur by the lax mind rather than forced to happen by the power of a resolute will. Arbitrary conclusions show how little their authors know. Multiply my dead young friends by thousands of my own, by thousands, and my own traumatic survival gives me reason enough, I think, for wanting to criticize what is happening in that society today. Would anyone care to fight? I have a magic lantern show too. I hope we can get it a little closer to the screen. What book is that? I think you need to move the table closer to the screen. These first few slides are early work done many years ago. I don't have many slides. I've only taken them for a few years, and so I don't have much to show you. But that's the carpenter Joseph. It's a sketch. That's another sketch of a mysterious lady. I forget who she is. That's Samson. That's John the Baptist coming down a hill with something on his mind. That's another sketch. Okay.
All right.
Samson. We're going the wrong way.
You got me doing a 3-minute flat also.
There's not much you can say about that.
How big is it?
Not very big. This is old stuff. A sketch, idea sketch, a concept sketch. You got to start somewhere, so it starts with a concept idea sketch. That's more of a study than a sketch. Samson, after Delilah had cut his hair off, of course, and had his eyes put out. Another sketch.
Is it stone?
No, that's clay. That's a model for a series of 3, faith, hope, and love. This is faith. This is all old stuff. 30 years old. Not a mysterious lady.
You still have
No,
With clay?
no.
Still has the clay.
I don't know who that is. Saint somebody. Now we're getting into a few years more recent. This is Goliath. That's in a cold cast bronze, and he's saying, "Where do you think you're going?" Goliath again. I used a mirror for the model. An erotic sculpture. This appeared, this was publicized, not advertised, but publicized in Playboy magazine in 1977. We sold about 10 of them. We have a mold. Another sketch of a Vietnam-era soldier. A World War II sailor. That was carved by John Hanna. This is going to appear in the next edition of National Sculpture Review. It's a quarterly put out by the National Sculpture Society.
How big is that frame?
6.5 feet. Here's another sketch that's been cast in a permanent medium. It's a resurrection. That's as far as it got. The client had big plans, but when he got the price, the whole thing died in committee, which is the story of my life. Death in committee. My best work has never been done. Firemen for the Rockland County Fire Department. This is a half-scale working model. It came out so well I had it cast in resin, and then we had at this time it had a bronze patina on it, but it no longer does. That was posed, John Hanna posed for that. He's a wrestling champion at the University of Michigan. Looks like a memorial. This is a prototype for an attitude of sorrow. This was the final conclusion after I began with that prototype, and after many in-between attempts, I ended up with this. I consider this the best thing I've done because of the effort that went into the final conclusion. And the conclusion is nothing much more than a sketch because, like so many other things, I was one of the 1,400 losers. That's supposed to be 40 feet high in Washington, but they've got a wall there instead. This is called In the Garden. That's Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane. Incidentally, Eric Oberg polished that. This is the world's greatest quarterback calling for a play from the bench and not getting any answer. And a couple of days later on the cross, he said, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" He still got no answer. And of course, now we all know. The world knows. The Western world.
How big was that, Frank?
That's a well over life-size head. That stands about 4 feet high. This is a sketch for the monument for James Michael Curley in Boston. That's as far as it got. I was paid for my effort, but I didn't get the commission. They had $45,000, and there are 3 figures involved here. They had $45,000, and the architect had agreed to pay for the base. So I decided that the 3 sculptures would cost $45,000, and the base, which is the uprights and the base underneath, that cost $45,000 also. So for $90,000, I could do the whole thing. That's just the way James Michael Curley would have tried it. The committee was not impressed.
Curley would have made it work.
Yeah. I researched James Michael Curley, read 4 books, one he'd written himself, and got to like him, and was very disappointed when I didn't get to carry through the... This was to go in downtown Boston near the market area in back of City Hall. It's on a traffic island. It would have been a perfect place for a Gaylord. Small. This weighs about 70 or 80 pounds. It's a small sculpture. It's called Grand Jeté. The other one was Grand Jeté Féminin. This is Grand Jeté Masculin. On point. These are small sculptures. That's granite, pink granite.
Is that a commission or for yourself?
Well, it's for myself. Everything's for sale, including me. Arthur Fiedler. Just for myself. On vacation, I had 2 weeks, and I'd made a model of Fiedler, and I thought I'd carve it, and did. It's 5 feet high, and it stands, it's in the Mugar Memorial Library of Boston University. It's among Fiedler artifacts. It's pink granite on a black granite base. This is a sketch. I received a phone call one night. I was in bed, and the man on the other end said, "We think," even California, they're still up then, "we think maybe you're the sculptor to do our Shakespeare composition for the Old Globe Theater in San Diego." And half asleep, I couldn't think of anything to say, but not only have you got a Shakespeare nut here, but you're talking to a theater nut also. And I'd be very interested in something like that. And of course, the things you like, you don't make any money on because you put too much into them. But this is the initial sketch. is a study and a working model. More detail. This is the final product. It stands now in the lobby, in a stairwell in the lobby of the old Globe Theater. And the man did not want a metal plate. This down at the lower right hand, it's the it tells who the sponsor is, who bought the thing. And he did not want a metal plate, he says, because we're on the wrong side of the San Andreas Fault. And when they find that, after the big blow, I want my name to be in stone on it.
How big is that?
What's that?
How big is that?
It stands 7 feet tall. Those are, the head and hands are well over life size. Jerry Williams did a lot of the carving on that. Who sits among us. King Lear. Blow wind, crack thy cheek, rage blow. Ophelia. Where the willow grows aslant the brook, she did come with great garlands of crowflowers, daisies, long purples, and nettles. I never could find out what a long purple was, and so I just made one up. She's drowning, by the way. Half-scale working model for the Madonna. It gives you an idea of the size of the finished work. Most of that was cut by Jerry Williams. But you see who's standing by it. That's John Hanna's back down there on the left. That's out of focus. That's the way it goes when you have somebody else take photographs for you. William Penn, 7.5 feet tall on a 3-foot base. This was for Penn Treaty Park in Philadelphia to commemorate the founding of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. Shows the initial sketch on the left, the scale working model, the portrait study, and the final product in the center.
Frank, please explain how each is a progression and development, and how you have
the concept sketch is what occurred in, the concept is the far left. It was approved by the client and a scale working model. They originally intended for it to be 6.5 feet tall. They raised so much money, they changed it to 7.5 feet tall. That's why the scale model is less than half scale. Then a portrait development occurs. That's on the right. And all these together, combined together, make up the full scale. figure portrait of William Penn. This was carved mostly by, not all, but mostly by Stanley Luther-Staniski, who worked in my studio at that time.
Is the scale model in stone as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is the scale model in stone or is that in clay?
Plastic.
Yep. Yeah, plaster. It's in place. Penn Treaty Park, that's the Delaware River in the background. And two nieces. The beautiful day, and that's the biggest dedication I've had. They had a band, they had speakers. Dr. Ashbel Smith, feisty little fellow, 5'6" tall, used to get in fights on the legislature floor in Texas. He went to Texas in 1837 as a frontier doctor. He got into politics, got in the Army, in the Civil War. We know about Ethan Allen up here, but in Texas they don't know about Ethan Allen. But they know about Ashbel Smith. We don't know about him up here, although he was born in New Haven. This was carved completely by Jerry Williams. John the Baptist. This is not even shipped yet. It was done this past year. It was carved by George Kuryanovich, mostly.
Is that from a memorial or?
Yes, that's it goes in a mausoleum complex in the Chicago area. That's 6.5 feet tall. This is a popular one. This is St. Francis. He would be about 8 feet tall if he stood up. Bill Kelly carved this. Nearly all of it. I worked a little on the face. It's a human St. Francis. Not very saintly, but very human. He wasn't very saintly anyway. He lived in the woods and he was dirty and you wouldn't want him in your house. I don't know how that got in there. That's the beginning of another slideshow called World War II. We won't go into that.
Did they have color back then?
The wise guy is Bill Kelly, who carved those last two figures you saw. Not this one, but the other two. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Eric, Jerry, John, and Frank, for sharing your thoughts and your work with us tonight. We have scheduled some time for a brief question and answer period. If there are any questions of the speakers, if the speakers can come up. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Someone just asked me if I should ever sign it. And I told her that no, never. I mean, almost never. Once in a while we sneak one in, but it's as though they're all to be anonymous. It's the way the memorial industry is.
I always forget.
You would do it now. You're one of the ones that can put one in. I do. I did on that Vietnam soldier, which, by the way, went with the other ones you saw. It went with the doughboy, one of the doughboys, and it went with the sailor and the airman and the Vietnam soldier. All are together in a place at the American Legion Hall, Pennsylvania headquarters, across the river from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
That's one of the doughboys. And
Yeah,
one of the
sailors.
sailors. And a couple of sailors.
But I did sign that
John,
statue.
I've been doing some research of an artist you probably all know, Carlo Abate from Barre.
You got his portrait put down in there?
And one of the things that occurred to me during my research was that it was clear that this man was a master and a fine artist. And what is not clear, however, in society today is whether the monument carver, whether the commercial orientation of your art deems you or takes you away from being a fine artist. I personally don't think so, but I'd like you to talk about how you feel about the identity of yourselves in that sense.
Can I begin?
Sure.
I think it's inevitable that whatever I know at the time ends up in the work I'm doing. And I'm always trying to do as much with it as I can, given the limitations of time and making a living. And sometimes, as Frank said too, that if you really have an interest in it, you let the profitability of it slide and put more into it.
We're all poor.
Yeah.
He's the only one who has a suit.
20 years ago, I had a necktie on.
I do have a necktie.
So did Jim Acorn.
You could say, too, that what Eric is trying to point out is that as granite carvers, 99% of our work is direct carving. Okay, it's not approached as a piece of fine art. A piece of fine art, which Frank has showed you many of, you start with a sketch model, an idea that develops into a half-scale model, and that is blown up into the final carving. And therefore, Frank doesn't even really have to do the final carving. He's the one who's doing the creative, artistic part of it. That's the sketch model and the half-scale model. From there on, a carver, such as myself or someone else trained to blow up these sketches into full scale, can do it without having to be a creative artist. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not a creative artist. That's why I brought my art to show you. See? But like I say, 99% of it is just a direct carving, and some of it ends up for real.
Well, a lot of times too, it's customers buying a pair of hands and a pair of eyes to execute an idea that he wants. You know, and it's not the artist's idea that's being done. It's per order, you know, or commission. That's the way the commissions work.
I've tried to turn that around a lot of times and have.
Limited success.
Yeah.
Have you had any women apprentices?
Yes, I've had 2 or 3. I had a young lady, she lasted 2 days. She had, now this is the truth, she had a BFA, an MFA, here we go again, from the University of Pittsburgh, and she had studied further at Chicago Art Institute, and she was a nice young lady, I'm not making fun of her. And then she had studied abroad on a grant. And she couldn't even draw. I gave her the simplest thing I had, which was a little profile head of Christ with a model. I worked with her because I thought I should. The first one I mostly did. I said, now the second one you're going to do all yourself. And she couldn't do it. She finally came to me and said, I'm just not educated for this sort of thing. And she went away with all those letters. And I've had so many students, so many young students come to me for work, and I show them what they're getting into, and they will say, well, I haven't done anything like that, but I can learn that. No, not on my time. You should have learned that in college.
Well, I remember Annie Sears, she tried about a week. Do you know Annie? Yeah, she's from around here. And she was ready to, I've never seen any, she really put a lot into it and gave it a really good try. And at the end of the week, she was glad that she couldn't hack it because physically it was abusive. I mean, it's really an abusive.
It takes a very unusual woman to get into granite carving. Now, I've never met a woman who didn't think she was unusual. I came here a little frightened with what I was going to say because I was afraid someone would take exception to it. And now I'm almost disappointed. Suppose I stood up and said, if I were God, I would take 40 years of Picasso, the last 40 years of Picasso's life, and give 20 of it to John Keats and 20 to George Gershwin, and there'd be much more beauty in the world and a lot less junk. Wouldn't anybody like to fight with that? No? Who am I to try to haul down Picasso to my level because I can't come up to his? That's your answer. Who are you? Because you can't go up to Picasso's level to haul him down to your own? And the answer to that would be just pure honesty. The approach, I think, to art. If you like it, say you like it. If you don't, say you don't. Don't allow yourself to be taken in by the tailor, the clever tailor that made the emperor a new robe. That only the lofty-minded people could see it. Naturally, everybody in town could see that the emperor had a beautiful new robe on, including the emperor. Until eventually some little honest person whispered, you know, he looks naked to me. And somebody else said, don't come to think of it, he does look naked, because the emperor ultimately had trouble with his new clothes. But no one can't say that they didn't fit, or that they weren't original.
Well, that's your question.
I agree with it, except that I choose to ignore that. And I can just go ahead and do what I want to do, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I am able to make a living. I can say there's not much time for other stuff, but I don't need to complain about what choices I've made. And I'm still making those choices. And if the choice tomorrow is go to work and do what I promised to do, or try some new ideas, I'll probably compromise and go to work first, and then later on, work a little on the ideas.
Yeah, isn't that the problem though? It always gets put off. You never get to it. You just talk yourself out of it.
I mean, even if Michelangelo never lived, there'd be plenty of art to look at. And it's not to say it wasn't valuable what he did. It's just that I really feel that what I do is enough, and it won't matter if I didn't get the Great Artist recognition or the Great Artist Commission. It doesn't matter.
Yes, it does.
It does not matter.
It matters to me.
It won't matter to the world. And so you have your ideas. You can bring them to fruition if you want, but you don't have to wait for the world to recognize me. I don't have to wait for that.
Yeah, doesn't that recognition come? The harder you work, the more you expect the recognition, but it just doesn't show. And
it just doesn't matter.
Expecting the recognition, and it just doesn't happen.
It's also hard to set the world on fire from northern Vermont. This is not exactly a crossroads.
Frank, we might point out that most of the market that we deal in, even though we are all 4 carvers in Barre, Vermont, and there's some other carvers here also, there's about 17 carvers in Barre, Vermont. Very little, hardly anything goes to the Vermont area. In other words, all of this stuff is going to New York, Pennsylvania. It's going out of state. So our market is not Vermont. I just thought I'd point that out.
How come you won't pick granite to work in? I mean, I hear everybody saying a different way. It's difficult. Can't get the same texture. Each of you has.
There's a market for it. Provides a living.
Yeah.
We're all from different parts of the country, but we're here because that's, John says, That's where the stone is.
Even with the marble, when I first was interested in sculpture, I came to Proctor, and they said that our only sculptor we still have, this is what I was told then in '74, is now working in the drafting room, and he suggested I go on to Barre. Yeah.
Even our clientele, it's a very narrow segment. Frank is one of the few who has broken into other markets other than the traditional Catholic cemetery market. He does public monuments, which he's showing me. I've done virtually no public monuments other than for him.
Yeah.
I just work with the Catholic cemeteries. That's
I married him for his back. We were partners at one time, and I think soon we'll be again. I hope. Well, this is current stuff. I don't have pictures or anything.
Look forward to it.
Well, he's in progress now. He should be finished toward the end of this week or early next week.
How about Ella?
We call that the Grosso Project. I'm always afraid I'll call her Ella in front of a committee member. I did, in fact. I got a phone call from one of the committee members, wondering how the work was going. I said, "Well, you hear that noise out there? That's Ella being sawed." And then fortunately, he didn't seem to look upon that as any derogatory remark, but we refer to her so much as Ella around there. And I told the boys, just stop saying that. The Grosso Project. She's just sitting there waiting for me to get back working on her. She's in marble. She's 7.5 feet tall, and will go on the Connecticut State Capitol building probably sometime next fall. Whenever they want to do it.
Why have you been able to break into the public monument market? What is the key issue there?
It just seems that for years, when anybody got anything unusual they didn't know what to do with, they'd send it to me.
Then John or I would carve it.
Jerry. Now Bill, George. George is my projectionist.
One of the guys from Frank's studio stand up. I think we got a couple of them here. We got 3.
All of them.
All of them here?
Let's go, guys.
Yeah, there's another one. There's another one.
John Triano.
Rock busters.
Knuckle scrapers.
Frank is responsible for all of these fellows that stood up and the rest of us here for being here.
Quite a few others in the industry.
He's given us the opportunity. I'm not saying he taught us. I'm not going to say he taught us.
He told me right away the first day.
I mean, his philosophy in teaching is he shows you the stone, gives you a machine, and says, do it. But he gave us all the opportunity to make a living using our skills, our artistic skills, which otherwise we might have been bagging groceries or, some other occupation that wouldn't have carried us as far as it has. Now, I'm not saying all of our careers are going to go in the same direction, but I've been doing it for 13 years. I'm still here.
They can take a positive form, like say the back of my hand, and they pack sand around it. And they make sand on both sides, take the form out, and pour the bronze into it. And that's one of the simplest forms of bronze casting. But the lost wax, you usually job that out somewhere to a foundry that's been in business for a long time that does that kind of process. But just for me, it's working in clay. Working in bronze is working in clay. Everything you get out of the clay, you're going to get back in the bronze. It's really a lively surface, and just the quick things you do with a tool are reproduced exactly in metal, and it's a whole different thing than stone. Stone's slow, laborious. It's hard to make it look quick. It's more like glass, and the only way to carve this stuff, this is sandblast here, but the only way to carve this stuff is with diamond tools. You can't pound on it, it just fractures.
How old is that, sir?
This is about 150 million years old. It's quite a thing to contemplate. That's why I like working with it too. But a range of materials, that's what that is. Granite, it shouldn't be the, for me, isn't the end of the road. I like marble, I like this. Whatever else I can get my hands on. It's material.
But whatever it is, you know, we can figure out a way of cutting it eventually. We can experiment with this method, with that method. The thing that's important is to have a clear concept of what you want to get from your material.
Yeah.
And choose something appropriate to that material. So that, you know, when I'm doing Vermont marble, it's different from Carrara marble. It's certainly a lot different from granite. And you have to be more cautious with marble. You have to approach the form much more gradually.
It's also two different ways of carving. Carrara marble is it's more skinned away, whereas granite cleaves. It's got a grain to it, and you break large chunks of granite away.
Yeah,
it's because of the nature of the material that they can do that.
You can't bruise marble. You can't pound on it like
you mustn't do that. You certainly can bruise it very easily, and with just a little bit of carelessness, you can do a lot of damage.
So your question is a valid one. We've carved at Gaylord Sculpture Studios in the past. We carved something that was just about like sitting. It was something called dolomite or some crazy thing like that. It was out of the Italian mountains, and that stuff we couldn't carve it the traditional way we carved granite. We had to go out and rent a jackhammer.
That was the item. That was the trick that made it possible to rough that out.
And these are things you run against. And the thing is that, and this is where I say from a business point of view, you want to know what you're carving. I've started some granites are 20% harder than other granites. They're tougher.
Marble's softer, but I can carve granite much faster because I can hit it so hard. And it doesn't bruise deeply. It only bruises, you know, very, very shallow.
It's basically a dead surface of granite.
Well, it needs light and it needs a special treatment. It needs a special choice of form for it. It has to be a compact form. It has to be massive in its design rather than subtle.
Yeah.
Marble, you can make subtle designs work with, and it's fine for a portrait. But granite fails as a good portrait material because it's not subtle.
Yeah, it can't model.
You have to have very bold shapes.
Clippy.
Yeah. You need clean, sharp edges. Very, very definite form. Deeply incised, and you know, doing as much as possible to vary the surfaces.
Have you noticed on a couple of the slides, at least, if you were using pink marble and gray marble in the same sculpture, what was the mechanics of marrying red or pink marble to gray?
I don't think that was the case. It was probably granite which showed its color when polished, and when it had the broken up surface that was made by pounding on the surface, it showed a light color that might have had very little of the stone's color shining through.
Could have been a pink stone with sandblast rubber on it or something.
That's true too. It could have been a rubber coating that's used for sandblasting that made the gray color.
What you're talking about is an inlay that hardly anybody does anymore. Inlaying one stone into another.
Also, after the question,
be done. You can put one block inside of another.
It can be done.
Yeah, you can do it. This here shows you an example of what Eric was talking about. Now, this is a semi-polished surface here. And this is an axe surface, even though it's the same stone.
We can see it.
Oh.
Well, after the question,
it's too heavy to pick up.
20 front frames do it.
At least pick up that high. It's about 100 pounds.
I realize large works like the Italian-American Memorial are difficult and once-in-a-lifetime experiences, but how about on a smaller scale, a sculpture garden or something like that in the Barre area with some of the works that you folks have in your garage and whatnot, but just a plot of land where the thousands of visitors that visit Central Vermont. There's enough of that stuff sitting in your garage so that we could pull something together.
If I do that, I'd like to make something harder to carry away than some of these little items.
Yeah, certainly.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, that would be really.
Talk later.
Oh, yeah.
You ought to get the state of Vermont to do that down in Montpelier.
They like those things along the highway.
Granite industry was talking about doing that at one time, a museum of granite stuff, but that's all, you know, it'd be all trade related, you know. I don't
Maybe we
think
get a
it's-
lottery that pays for the fine arts or something. You know?
It'd be another Hope Cemetery type thing, and that's, I'd like to go away from that. Yeah.
Actually, Hope Cemetery and Elmwood Cemetery, and
Well, there's
one over here, what's the name of it?
Green Mountain.
Green Mountain.
Green Mountain's got some beautiful things.
It's not a garden though. Like what you're talking about is a landscape type of garden type.
A downtown
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, and then everybody's invited to have something to drink and eat, and you can talk more informally. Are there any questions or comments now? Okay. I'd also like to thank you again, and also remind everyone that next month, September 8th, there will be 2 painters who will be coming and showing slides and talking about their work, as Billy Brower and Lorna Ritz will be here September 8th, Monday night. I hope you all will be back. Thank you.